Stephen is an award-winning Australian comic creator with a lifelong passion for comics. He's launched his first graphic novel, Tabby, a Romeo and Juliet tale with cats, in 2015, and his works are now featured in over 500 libraries across Australia, Canada, New Zealand, Singapore and the UK. Stephen loves the unique blend of words and artwork of the comic medium. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
What drew you into doing graphic novels?
Oh look, it's one of the most interesting mediums because it combines pictures with words. I still remember my mum buying me my first Batman comic. This is back, almost 30-something years ago. And there's things that the written prose just cannot show. And sometimes when you combine the best of two worlds, also reading dialogue, which you can reread multiple times, with great artwork, it's a unique blend that you don't get with prose books. The other thing that you also get with graphic novels or comics is there's so many things intrinsic to the medium which you don't get anywhere else. I'll give you an example. When you're reading, and I'll use Harry Potter as an example, the last paragraph of every chapter of Harry Potter is a semi-cliffhanger. Because what the writer's trying to do, and not just Harry Potter, Dan Brown, Da Vinci Code, all that, it's to get you to go and read the next chapter. It's the same for graphic novels. It's called a page turn. At the last panel of every page, you have to drop the question. Or you have to drop something that makes them turn the page. And then you get the next page, which you can be a bit more expositional. But on every odd page of a graphic novel, it needs to be exciting for them to flip the page. And there's so many of these unique traits in that medium that I love. And it's that combination that you cannot find in a movie, a TV series, or even a book. It's only unique to graphic novels or comics.
When did you start illustrating?
Look, I did a lot of drawing way back in 2015. I did a lot of live drawing classes. Now, I freely admit a lot of my books I do work with other artists on it, mainly because I am really slow. When I draw, I take what a good artist can do in about 6-7 hours, I take about a week. And for me, it's more about getting the story up. So I freely admit, drawing has always been a passion, and the absolute passion for me is anatomy and people. Hence why I love live drawing. When they get people in and they do the really cool poses and you're trying to match that's the thing that drives me. The other thing why I'm probably not a really good graphic novel person is I hate drawing buildings. And if you see, and also to be fair, a lot of manga and stuff nowadays would just use 3D buildings there. But I still like drawing buildings, I'm not an architect.
What inspired your graphic novels, Tabby and Wordsmith?
Okay, so Tabby was actually my first one. So Tabby, I'll caveat this, it's Romeo and Juliet with cats, but I would 100% say, unlike the Shakespearean tragedy, all the cats live. I could not kill a single cat, I couldn't do it. But Tabby was actually a written exercise for me. It's, you probably heard the term magnum opus for a lot of creators. It is the story that's been bubbling in your head forever. Tabby wasn't one of those. Tabby was actually, for me, when it started, I wanted to be able to tell a story when none of the main characters talk. Cats don't talk. They meow, but they don't actually talk. So when I wrote the whole story, I had to tell the entire Romeo and Juliet saga, which is cats and not talking. It was actually a lot harder than I expected it to be. And when I finally got it out, I was so happy with it. And I absolutely loved the story, just because it let me do something the graphic medium lets you do. Tell an entire story with none of the main characters saying a single line of dialogue. Now, Wordsmith is the polar opposite of that. Wordsmith is, as you probably tell from the title, it's filled with words. And it's also the nature of words as well, because different words mean different things to different people. And I always use the example of home. If I say home to somebody, they might think of a physical building. Somebody might think of a time they felt safe. Some people might think of home as family. The people around them, that's my home. And so in Wordsmith, it's all about how these words are different to different people. So the main character in Wordsmith can physically craft the word in a magical way, and when you touch that word, you get what the word means to you. And of course, when she crafts these words, she makes mistakes, and what she thinks she crafts isn't what the person expects it to be. For example, like she was tasked to craft the word brave, but she realizes brave as a word, sorry about that, brave as a word does not exist because there's no such thing as bravery. And I'll explain what that means. If you are willing to run into battle and go to a fight, are you brave? Not really, because you weren't afraid. The person who's brave is someone who's afraid to do something and does it anyway. That's bravery. So when she crafts the word brave, she actually crafts the word fear. And of course that gets into a whole bunch of trouble.
Yeah.
And so it's basically taking words and actually understanding not just the etymology of the word, but how the words relate to people. And it then ties back into, it's a little bit meta, ties back into prose and things like that. But I love it. It's fun. There's of course fantasy adventures. There's a little dragon there as well. So, but I love it. It's that's my inspiration was definitely how people perceive words and how easy it is to be misunderstood.
And I guess it's really important with kids. That's why it will stand out to kids as well, because like they will say some things but mean the completely other meaning as well.
So the first two wordsmiths are the New South Wales Parents Reading Challenge. And the feedback I get from a lot of school librarians is basically, oh my God, you actually understood, especially there are a lot of kids who come from overseas where they don't get the nuance of words. And it's very difficult to teach kids the nuance of English. And because they don't, look at Australia. Do you want to do that? Yeah, no. Do you want to do that? Yeah, no. Do you want to do?
Yeah. What do you mean?
Exactly. So a lot of these nuances are actually really difficult to originally explain. And Wordsmith actually has a fun play on a lot of, you're saying this, but you're really meaning this. And so that's where, and of course it's a adventure story, there's evil, there's good, there's bad. It's still a lot of fun part of it, but the core really is that play on words, which I absolutely love.
It's always good to have a good play on words as well. What is your writing process? Because you mentioned that you also write with other illustrators as well. Do you write the story first and sort of give them guides of what you sort of expect?
So comic writing is in terms of the process, it's actually a very structured process. So in terms of the script, it's a bit like a movie script as well, because you break panels, you break dialogue, depends how far you go down. And if you think about, say, a standard movie script that goes to a director, what the director will then do is they'll go to script, okay, this guy needs to say that. The director will then scribble on the script. I want a aunt's view angle here, I want him to flip it to do this, and they will then expand the script after that. As a comic writer, you kind of have to do the original script and the director's notes into the same place. Saying that though, if you collaborate with artists who you work really well with, there's a lot of trust there to go, you know what, if you can think of a better way to do it, do it. And if you think of, and I'm going to get back to the movie analogy, how many times the director goes, you know what, improv that, let's see how that goes. And that's exactly the same with all comic scripts. You might just go, you know what, knock yourself out. Here's what I think should happen, but you do what you think is better. And sometimes that's where a lot of the magic happens. Sometimes you hear a lot of movie scripts where you go, that line was improv, and that was the best line of the movie.
You have a lot of trust in the people that you work with.
Yeah.
They're the experts as well. So.
Correct. Like for example, the other thing I also do is, I'm also a professional letterer. So in terms of the comic script, I actually do a lot of lettering. I work with a few publishers doing lettering and things like that. There are a few times where, especially with publishers who trust me, absolutely trust me. Lettering is very technical because all I do is get the script and put the word balloons in. But there are times where the word balloons doesn't flow well with the pictures. And I would say to the editor, hey, I will do as I'm told, don't get me wrong, I understand that I'm doing a technical job here, but doesn't make sense that he says it, because a good example would be if she says something like, "How could you leave me?" and the picture that they have is her smirking. It's a very different thing if she's crying. How can you leave me? Because and it says, and I've read the whole script. She's meant to be sad here, but the artist has drawn a little smirk on her. Do you still want to use those words there? And the writer had written that God knows how long ago to reach this final point. So it's sometimes I will go back and go, you know what? Maybe she could smirk and go and be say something sarcastic, like, "So you're leaving again," with the smirk. It might have a bigger impact than a question. And it's really fantastic that if you have different editors who trust you and trust the process, they'll go, you know what, let's run with that, see how that goes. And so that's where the magical collaboration happens. And I know novel writing is sometimes a much more lonelier process because it's just you all the time. But with comics, you've got the inker, the letterer, the colorist. Don't get me started on color theory because I will go down that rabbit hole. But it's just so many things that's happening. And we'll touch on color theory a little bit. Red is like color for anger and stuff like that. So you just have to be careful. Like, you come from red here. She's not angry, but blue. And you got all these little nuances that each person who you trust is bringing it to that next level.
What is the most challenging part of your writing process?
Honestly, you probably heard this part from I won't guarantee from every author. And I've mentioned it a million times. Getting it written. It's the draft one is the most painful process because before the draft is written, that story, that outline is percolating in your head. Oh, I want this to happen. And they're going to say this thing that's so epic. And his monologue is going to change the world. And then when you write it, it's like, man. Really? No, I didn't quite nail it. But in your head, it was perfect. So that first draft is probably the most difficult part because it's translating something that's perfect in your head to something that's real. And I always tell people this, done, not perfect. And if it's, you have to get it done. Because then from your draft one, right, it gets better, draft two gets better, and it gets better until you reach the point where you're actually comfortable with it. So we just have to always keep at it, really. But getting that first draft, it is rough. I have to really admit, it is really, really rough.
You can't do work from anything if it's not written.
Exactly.
And you can't edit anything. You need something on the page for you to actually go, yes, this works, or no, not this part.
Yeah.
What advice would you give to a writer working on their first book?
Okay, so the first book, your first draft is going to suck. And I'm not mincing words, it is really going to be bad. And guess what? Expect it to be bad. Put down every cliche, write down every trope, copy lines from other movies, steal whatever, but just get it done because it's not going to be good. If you expect it to be good, it's going to be really difficult for you because you're not going to finish it. So my always advice is write it. It doesn't have to be good, but it's done. And when it's done, it's magic because it's done. You can then make it better. You cannot work with an idea in your head. And as you probably know, I've got quite a few people who actually have approached me. With, I want to get published, I want to do this, I want to do all these fantastic things. And I always say to them, how's your first draft going? Oh, I don't need to do that, I've got this great idea, I'll pitch the idea. How's your first draft going? And the people I really give time of the day to, I will read your draft, I'll give you all the advice, whatever, are people who actually finish their first draft. Because what you find is a lot of people, and it's not trying to disparage anybody, but they love the idea in their head more than they like the final product. The idea in their head is perfect and they love it so much that sometimes it's really difficult for them to go, it's real. They don't want it to be real. And by the way, I can fully acknowledge that. I can fully accept that. But if you want to take the next step, you have to make it real and you have to do that first draft. Although it's going to be horrible. And I'll freely admit, I have looked through some of my early first drafts and I cringe. I cannot read it. I look at it and I want to go, did I write It's so bad. It is so bad.
And I guess after so many books you do, your
But
writing gets better as well. You learn from mistakes that you made in your previous books, definitely.
my first draft of new books are still horrible, and that, it's really funny that people think, oh my God, that's so fantastic. It's a lot of my stuff really is horrible, and I can freely admit that. But you have to know that it's done, and you can make it better. But you cannot make something better that's not done.
What is the most important lesson you've learned as an author?
I know it's all tied to the same thing, but it's to actually finish stuff. Again, a lot of times people don't finish what they start, and you cannot pitch, you cannot do anything with something you haven't finished. So I have to freely admit, I actually wanted to start writing a lot earlier, like basically since I was like 20 plus years ago. I got this great idea, I got these great ideas on writing, and I fell into the trap of procrastinating and writing outlines and doing everything around the peripheral. Oh, I'll get some character designs going, I'll do that, without actually finishing the work off. And I freely admit I was jumping from, oh, it's gonna be this sci-fi book, or this fantasy book, or this slice of life book, and it was always that jump, and I never actually got around to, you know what, pick one and just finish it. One of the things that actually really drove me to that was my daughter. So my daughter was born, she's a teenager now, so it's all fun and games and all. But one of the things before she was born was I had to think to myself, and it was more or less, it's what do I want to tell her when she's 18? Do I want to tell her all my dreams about this great story outline I have in my head or whatever? Or do I want to hand over a draft or if a book or whatever says, hey, I did this? And that actually stopped my procrastination. It just snapped it. It just goes, when I realized all I was doing is writing outlines and character designs and all the stuff but the actual work itself, when I realized I had, in the last 10 years, almost nothing to show for, and if I was going to tell my 18-year-old daughter, when she turns 18, oh, I got these great ideas. But Dad, what have you actually done with it? Got great ideas. And the first, when that, I don't know what happened, but in my head, that just flipped the switch. I finished my first draft in about 2 weeks. And it was crazy. It was like, okay, it can get done. And it was, for me, it was like, oh, wow. And the funny thing is, once you are able to get past that the first time, the second time was a lot easier. The third time was a lot easier. And now I kind of have this process in my head of what to do. And it feels so much more comfortable with me to get past that next hurdle. For first-time creators, you probably get the feel of that procrastination. But once you get past it once, and the funny thing is, mentally, once you get past it once, it's no longer a hurdle. Because that hurdle is very instinctive in your head to go, you're never going to do it. Oh wait, I've already done it.
You know what it feels like.
And you know what? Exactly.
And my final question is, who's the biggest supporter of your writing?
Oh, it's definitely my wife. So my wife has always been my biggest supporter, and she's always been there to encourage me to make it happen. Like, she was the one who, way back, was going, you know what, just, God damn it, stop talking about it, just do it. And it's so different when it's done. Man, I always think back to the almost 10 years I procrastinated, and I just go, in that 10 years, think of how much in the last 10 years of what I've done. I could be 10 years ahead of where I am if I just started, if I just did it. And for me, that's probably, I mean, you can't change the past. You can only do what you can today, which I think is, but man, I do look back and go, oh gosh, I just wish I'd started 10 years earlier.
You always think it's always good to have people close to you who are like pushing you and like making you grounded as well.
Yep.
Okay, that was my last question. Thank you so much for joining me today.